I'm Kayla from Live Oak Nest, and you're watching Hometalk.
So today we're going to be making over some terracotta pots, and the first thing I always like to do is start by spraying them with a matte clear sealant. Just do 2 to 3 coats. I want it really good and sealed before I start painting. So once everything is good and dry, then I'm going to go ahead and come in with a good coat of chalk paint. So you could use chalk paint here, mineral paint, even acrylic paint will do. I'm just using a creamy white color that I already had on hand, and it's a chalk paint. So I'm going to just paint on a good coat on my saucer and my flower pot, and I'm not going to worry here about getting it very smooth. Chalk paint kind of has a texture to it, and I like that, so I'm just going to slap on a good coat, and then I'm going to let it dry really well before I head on to the next step. Okay, so while this is drying, we're going to go ahead and work on our next step, which is creating paper clay molds for our pots. So you're going to need a couple of things here. First, you'll need some paper clay. You can pick this up on Amazon or at your local craft store. And then you're also going to need some silicone molds. So I like to kind of just line it up on the flower pot just to kind of get a sense of the size to make sure that I feel like it'll look okay once it's formed into a mold. So to get started here, we just want to kind of work the paper clay in our hands just back and forth. You just want to kind of warm it up a little bit so that it's a little easier to work with. So if you're working with your mold and you're feeling that it's kind of too hard to pull out of the mold, you can use just a paintbrush and just dust in a little bit of cornstarch in your mold, and that will help it just pull out a little bit easier. And then I'm going to take a kitchen spatula. You could use a paint scraper, a butter knife, anything will work. And I'm just going to push down and pull kind of away from the mold and up on that edge to remove the excess clay. Okay, so once that step is finished, you can go ahead and turn over your mold and work out your paper clay form. So I just like to turn it over upside down and then just roll back the silicone mold, and your form will kind of start to just peel out. Just make sure you're gentle here. You don't want to rip the mold when you're trying to remove it. So now we want to get this mold onto our flower pot. So I like to use this Gorilla Wood Glue. So what I'm going to do is flip over this mold, and then I'm going to use a paintbrush and just apply a generous amount of wood glue. So once you have all of your wood glue on the mold, you just want to gently flip it over and put it onto the flower pot. And paper clay is wonderful because it's still damp when we're doing this step in this process, and so when you put it onto the flower pot, it kind of just forms to the shape of the flower pot. So that's great. And once you put it on, you can still kind of move it around just a little bit before it starts to kind of dry and cure. So I'm going to use several different colors of paint and kind of give it an aged look. You could do a solid color here if you want, but I'm just taking a cream color, a mossy green, and then I'm also going to layer in a little bit of brown paint, and then go back in with a little bit of gold at the very end. Since I plan to be adding several different colors here, I'm just going to brush this on kind of sporadically over the pot. With all these layers, you don't need to completely paint the entire pot with each color. So we're just going to kind of go in here, brush it on a little bit messy, and just kind of vary where we're putting all the different colors. And then you'll see at the very end how it kind of just comes together and makes it look vintage or aged and a little bit less like it's brand new. So again, you don't need to cover the entire pot. We're just going to kind of brush on in random places the green color, and then I'm going to do the exact same thing with the dark brown. And don't worry if it starts looking a little crazy. We're going to go back and add that soft gray color on top of all of it, just kind of to smooth it all out and make it look a little bit less splotchy. So now that that is completely covered, I want to add a little bit of dimension to the pot, so I'm going to go back in with my white paint, and then I'm going to take a little bit of gold and just kind of highlight some different areas. So again, we're just going to kind of dry brush on a couple of different colors here. We're using the white to kind of highlight some of the details and the paintbrush strokes and a few of the details in the mold. And then I'm going to go back in with my finger and just use a little bit of that gold paint and kind of touch up around the edges and rub a little on the mold just as an accent color. Okay, so I really love what the gold adds. I think it just gives it kind of that, you know, the French vintage shabby look that I was going for. So here is this flower pot all styled for y'all. I think this turned out so beautiful. The little flower pot to the right is also one that I've done using the paper clay and the molds. I just think these are such a beautiful way to dress up a plain terracotta pot, and you can do them in any style you'd like, in any color. So y'all have fun with this, and I really hope you've enjoyed this project. Thanks so much for watching Home Talk, and I will see you next time.